expansion. Before we begin, let me explain how we're going to do this. Okay, this is an informational session. We have distributed cards which hopefully have written your questions down, left your name, email, and telephone number, and I will be reading those questions to the board. The formal presentation will be given by the director of the library, Terry Buford, if you step up here. Most of the trustees and board members are going to remain out in the audience, so they can you can review the proposal on the screen. Stephanie, before we begin, anything you'd like to say? You'll be doing half and half on a slideshow presentation.
Yep, I just want to thank everybody for coming tonight and being engaged in the process. I appreciate that. The whole board appreciates that.
Terry?
Good evening, everyone. This is our 23rd presentation on the new library proposal. And we're really pleased to see so many people here tonight. I know the weather was a little rough, and it's great to see you all here. Why are we here again for the 23rd time? Well, back in April, if you remember, voters overwhelmingly approved a referendum to build a new library. 7 residents of the town sued and put us into a difficult situation. We could fight it out in court, which could last a year or more, or we could address the issues that were raised by those residents and move ahead with some momentum, and that's what we decided to do. So the town board hired Passero Associates to rework the environmental statement that was at issue, and we found no changes. The new environmental impact statement has the same result as the last one, no negative impact, but it did mean that the town had to pass a new bonding resolution, and that meant there was an opportunity to have another referendum if enough people signed petitions, and that's what happened, so there will be another referendum. At that point, the residents who were suing agreed to end that lawsuit without any judgments being made by the court. Another resolution was not required, but because of the petitions, there will be another referendum, and it's this Saturday. I would just like to point out that from day one, the library board has been totally planning on having a referendum. No one's interested in building something that doesn't have a support of a majority of the residents, and we're confident that we will continue to have your support. As I was saying, nothing has changed in the environmental impact statement, but we have scaled down the project after listening to the residents. The building is now estimated to be about 40,000 square feet, and there's some advantages to that. It creates a smaller footprint on the town hall property, leaving more green space behind for the other activities that will occur here, like the festivals. It'll allow for additional parking if needed, but nothing else has really changed other than that building size, which again is a result of speaking to so many residents.
Something to add here is when we started the process, it was about a year ago when we had our press conference announcing our plans for the proposal. We as a board were committed to taking feedback and residents' input on the project from beginning to end. And we also said that the building would be up to an upper end square footage. So the 40,000 square feet that we scaled the overall project back to, based again on that feedback, as Terry said, we listened to residents' concern about, a little concern about the size. Some of you may have received some handouts that were given out by non-library board members with a study that was done in 2012. Was Passero, we hired Passero to bring the numbers that were done in 2005, a full-blown study of all of our different options, which we'll go into later. Passero brought those numbers into 2012 numbers. So the information that was passed out is, besides being taken out of context, that was just one piece of the puzzle. It refers to the building of a 50,000 square foot library and the costs attached to that. So that is now a 40,000 square foot building with associated reduced costs. We also, when we started this project, it was always a $13 million bond. That's what will be voted on Saturday, is a $13 million proposal. We always said that we would build the size library we could for that money, and any additional money that we needed, if the project would cost more than we needed or that we had, we would either scale back the project further, or we would fundraise for it, and we can seek grants for it. So there's different sources of revenue, but the $13 million is the most that we'd be able to borrow if it's approved on Saturday.
One of the other issues that we were considering when looking at the size of the building is that we want flexibility. Later tonight, we'll be discussing how public libraries evolve to meet the needs of the community, and that modern public libraries are not the book palaces of the past, where they were just large buildings full of books that you walked in, borrowed, and went away with. And because of that, a larger building gives us the flexibility to meet whatever needs come along in the future. And most of those are probably going to be not of a book storage nature, so that larger, flexible building is really going to help with that. So yes, we're talking about a central library here in the town of Arundecoit on the town hall campus, up to 40,000 square feet. And I want to emphasize that we are looking for a design that will complement the town hall architecture and not overwhelm it. Yes, it is larger than the town hall. Why that's a big deal, I'm not sure, but it is bigger than the town hall. But it does not have to dwarf it, and it certainly does not have to detract from, maybe we could say, Arundecoit's most beautiful building. But the issue here for the library is that the library needs more space. The library needs a lot more space. And the community is telling us what they want to do in that space. They want more library programs. They want more activities. They want other departments that do programming and that are pressed for space to borrow our space when needed. And we've been talking with the other departments in town about those sorts of things. Many community organizations have to scramble to find space for meetings every month. And when we go meet with them and talk about this proposal, they're all nodding their heads in agreement. Yes, meeting room space, must have it. So this is going to address that.
Something else to focus on when we talk about this is it is a library. Some other information that's been circulated around and put out in ads is claiming that we're building a community center on the town hall campus. It's not. It's a library with different library functions. And yes, the library does serve as a community gathering place, and that's what we want. And it will complement the programs that our current community center offers. It won't replace it. We'll be able to add additional stuff. Additional things that we'll be able to see in our library is dedicated quiet space. Right now, we don't have that. Everybody's kind of on top of each other, so we don't have the space to have dedicated quiet space. Some of the concepts that you may have seen when you came in show some general floor plans. There's a lot of different nooks and crannies for quiet study away from where other people are using the library. There'll be a dedicated teen area. There'll be a dedicated children's area. So all different types of things that while we have some of those now, they're kind of on top of each other. So it would be spread out so everybody will have their space so they can use their library the way they need to use their library. Things like tutoring space, not just for current students who are in our schools, but a lot of students now, older students, adult students, are taking online classes. They may not have the facilities, they definitely don't have the facilities in their current branches to be able to do that kind of work. So all those types of things that people are asking for, that other towns do have, and people are going to those other towns, we'd be able to bring here for our residents so they don't need to leave the town to get what they need.
So the bottom line here is that the current library facilities are inadequate. There's just no way around it. Claims that the current libraries are fine, they just don't hold water. And let's talk a little more about that. The last major renovation of either Arundecoit Library was in 1985. And so a lot has changed since then. Back in 1985, if you had an electric typewriter, that was a high-tech device. And now we've got so many electronic items in the library, computers, printers, scanners, and so on. Electrical systems are failing. Cosmetic improvements are not going to make the libraries bigger. Carpeting and paint, although nice, and make things a little more pleasant, just they don't solve our space-related problems. Some people say we're not spending enough money on upkeep. Well, over the last 5 years, we've averaged $44,000 a year in building maintenance and upkeep and repairs. And that's just barely keeping us going. And having two outdated branches 2.5 miles apart, definitely wasting resources here. Two of everything, duplication, that's really unnecessary. We're also going to talk a little more about what a great location this is for library users because of its being right in the middle of town.
Going back to that 1985 date, the library board's proposal is to build a flexible, and Terry mentioned it before, a flexible and adaptable space. So as the needs of the community change, as digital media becomes even more prevalent, we can change the interior a lot more easily. And so that when future boards are looking at the issues, they're not faced with the same grappling issues that we've been faced as library board over the last several years, is what to do. Our current buildings were not built with the intent to expand. So that's a big issue that we've been grappling with. So we don't want future generations and future boards to be faced with those same issues that we've been struggling with for a really long time.
So here's a chart that will help you understand where we are in relation to the other libraries in the Monroe County Library System. This is a chart that shows when the major libraries in Monroe County last built a new library or expanded. And up the left-hand side, you've got the number of years, and along the bottom, you've got the towns that are members of the library systems. And as you can see, most of the towns in this county have done major work or built new libraries in the last 15 years or less. Gates and Greece have no bar there because within the year, Gates built a new library, and the Greece library was recently remodeled. If you can believe it, it's over 10 years old, and they did some remodeling. An interesting thing about their remodeling, when they built that building, they too were working to stay under the proposed cost of the project. And so to make the building smaller, they cut off a couple meeting rooms that were originally part of the plan. Well, they realized their error. I was working there at the time, so you could say it was my error that I'm not going to repeat. And that is they had to rip out a bunch of book stacks and put in the two meeting rooms that they cut out because the community really needed them. And so that's why there's no bar for Greece, because they have remodeled within the last year. Another interesting chart, sizes of libraries. We say we need more space. Here's what we're talking about. Up the left-hand side, you'll see the number of square feet of each of those buildings in those major towns, and beneath the names of the towns are the populations they serve. At the top of each bar in the bar graph is the number of square feet of each building. And even though we're way behind most of the other towns, it's even worse than it looks because we don't have a 24,000 square foot building. We have two 12,000 square foot buildings. And in each one of those buildings, we're trying to do what Fairport's doing in 24,000 square feet, and what Webster's doing in 43,000 square feet, and what Pittsford's doing in 30,000 square feet. Smaller towns serving smaller service populations. So, try to do a 43,000 square foot job in a 12,000 square foot building. Really tough. Really tough.
The other thing to point out here is all of those libraries, with the exception of Greece, they have one library budget that they're able to focus on one building. We have one library budget that's about the same as other towns. It might be actually a little bit lower than a lot of those towns. And we're trying to do that across two full-service buildings. So we don't have the power, our tax dollars don't have the power that we can have by pooling our resources into one space. It's also probably worth mentioning that Greece, with 94,000 people, the largest population in a suburb of Rochester, they went from 5 library branches at one time. And over the years, they consolidated their resources. So now they have one really nice main branch, and they have one that I guess I would consider a satellite branch that's very limited in its resources and in its services. So a town the size of Greece was able to consolidate their resources into one building that now is very well used. There may be times when you go into any of these branches and maybe you're not seeing the types of people or the amounts of people that you think should be there based on we're saying library use, but library use ebbs and flows. There's times of the year when it's busier. This time of year, libraries tend to be a little bit slower. But the libraries are very well used.
I should also mention that Brighton and Fairport are currently working with consultants to remodel or expand their libraries. So, yes, the Town Hall campus is what we're talking about. We believe that this is a terrific central location for the library. When I started working here almost exactly 10 years ago, the library board was already looking at trying to figure out a way to consolidate the library branches. And one of the things that they promised when they announced that they were working on this is that they would try to find as central a location as possible. And we really feel like the town hall meets that goal. Other advantages of being here are it saves the cost of purchasing land to put the building on. We're not removing any property from the tax rolls, which is a major issue in this town. It can be reached safely on foot or bicycle. And we will make sure that the parking and traffic work and that the festivals will still be able to be held here on campus. Our seeker study, both seeker studies, showed that there will be adequate parking. In addition to the parking around the library, the town is reworking the entire way the town hall campus will work traffic-wise. They'll build another parking lot on the north side of the DPW building, which will draw many employee and town-owned vehicles away from the central parking lot out here, freeing up additional spaces beyond what the spaces that are constructed when the new library is built. And yes, the 4th of July and other festivals will still happen here on the campus, and I know that the library staff is looking forward to being part of those activities.
A couple of other things I wanted to mention on this slide. The parking lot that Terry is referring to is not the $9 million parking lot that has been advertised in people's letters. It's not. We're not demolishing the DPW and building a new parking lot. The other thing, there's been some concern about the trees on the town hall campus. We are assured that there's trees on our campus that are worth saving. If we do need to move them, we'll work with experts to relocate them to other parts of the campus. We have also had experts tell us that a lot of the trees are not the types of trees that you do want. They're not necessarily worth saving. They tend to spread disease, and there's different things about those trees that aren't really adding any quality to the campus. So we're committed to moving the trees that are worth moving. We're committed to replanting. I personally see it's a great opportunity for a fundraising where people can get together and raise money to plant new trees. It would be a great opportunity. The other thing about saving the cost of purchasing land, and back to the handout that was given to you by a non-board member, that study that was done in Pastro assumed we would have to purchase land. So there's a $500,000 allocation that's added to that total, which we would no longer need because we would not have to purchase land. In addition to that, and Terry's going to mention it later, we have the opportunity of selling property, which would then bring more property back onto the tax rolls. The cost of that revenue not being generated if we were to expand and renovate at each branch really needs to be added on to that one other concept that he's referring to that isn't actually in that total. So when you're comparing those types of things, when you're taking into context and looking at the big puzzle, it isn't necessarily what is being portrayed and what was given you. Oh, and I should also mention that the current branches are 2.5 miles apart.
If this is not your first presentation, you may notice that the next few slides are different. We've been talking to various architectural firms in the area, and they've all been submitting drawings of what a possible library would look like. We've been talking with them mainly because we're really keen on having a building that looks right on the campus, and that means complementary to the town hall, designed so that there's plenty of green space left behind, and also something that does not overwhelm the neighborhood. And so these are some new slides. This is from Passero and Barkstrom and LaCroix, showing they've submitted a few different ideas. This is what we call option one. It's a more spread out building with less elevation. This is option two, which is a more vertical building, preserving more green space. And as you can see, it has similar roof lines to the town hall, although the town hall is much taller. And it also has what I would consider to be architecture that complements the town hall. Maybe like a neo-colonial, neoclassical look. One of the things that we will be talking about when a new building is designed is there's a mixture of competing needs that the library has. This will be a much larger building, but we want to staff it with the same number of people. We don't want to hire more people. So the more spread out the building is, the easier it is to operate. But the more vertical it is, the more green space, the more space there is for parking, the more trees that can be saved. So somewhere in there is a sweet spot that we want to find that gives us enough of each so that everything works for us. And so that's why different options are being looked at, 2 stories, 3 stories, to give us, what we need and what we can do to satisfy these basically competing needs.
And by 3 stories, the town hall is actually 3 floors. Wouldn't necessarily be 3 stories, but it would be 3 floors. So the bottom level is partially underground, so it wouldn't be towering over the town hall.
We've been having internal debates about whether to remove this slide or not, because everyone knows where the town hall and the libraries are, but we just want to show you that the town hall campus truly is a central location in the town. And it really is pretty much smack dab in between those 2 branches that are only 2.6 miles apart, 2.5, something like that. I left Evans today at 5:30 in a snowstorm with heavy traffic. It took me 3 minutes to get here. So by my way of thinking, that means no one coming here from the west side will have to drive more than 3 more minutes to get here. Probably 4 minutes from McGraw, I'm thinking. Slightly farther. But this truly is a central location. There's just no way around that. And we are fulfilling the promise that we made 10 years ago that we were going to work to build a central location, central library in town.
Terry, I made it from the furthest point in the southeast corner of the town. The 3.6 miles as the crow flies in 9 minutes.
So if the farthest point from a central library in this town is 3.6 miles away, that's fantastic. Other towns, much more spread out, that we would have, by our measurements, the most central library in the entire library system. We've always wondered why we had these 2 branches that were so close together, and we've always been frustrated by the resources that we had to use up to duplicate so many services. And here you can get everything in one location. We'll be spending our budget dollars much more effectively, and you might have to drive 3 more minutes to get here. So a little bit more about how the library is going to get better. One of the interesting things about public libraries is every generation or so, its doom is predicted. First it was going to be the internet. Then it was going to be the e-books. And by the way, if you look at e-book sales, 2013, they are slumping. They have stopped expanding so rapidly, and overall, print books are still 80% of all book sales. So the library, a e-book purveyor for free, has evolved to meet the needs of the community, and we will always do that. And that's why we need that flexible building. And so whatever comes along, we're ready for it if we've got a building that we can, change around when we need to meet the needs of the community. One of the interesting things that's happening in libraries right now is, if you remember, I referred to old libraries as a book palace. Well, libraries are shifting away from just storing content to helping our patrons create it. Now, that sounds pretty highfalutin, but that could be as simple as your Facebook page and coming to the library to get some training on how to use it properly and safely. But we have some more pressing everyday needs that we need to address that the new library will help us with. For instance, because the buildings are so small, we have everything jammed in as tightly as possible. It's very difficult for people with mobility issues to get around the library. We're not violating the ADA regulations, but on many of them, we're within a half an inch of the minimums. Our disabled community desperately needs reasonable restroom facilities in our libraries, and we do not have them now. I'm sorry to say. And we need to address that issue, and this is how we propose to do it, to make the library a resource for everyone in the community, not just people who get around easily. Another major issue for us is the usage of the library by teens and children. People say to me all the time, "Terry, the schools are right down the street from the library. What a great location. Why would you want to leave there?" I say to them, if the school children actually stop at the library, we don't have any place for them to go. If more than a half a dozen show up, that means every computer in the building's in use and there's no place to sit down. Students routinely do homework sitting on the floor of the branches of our library system. And misbehavior aside, and just plain old enthusiastic children and teens happy to be at the library, even that can disrupt other users of the library because the space is so small. And that's really a shame. A child runs through the door of the library and says, "Oh boy, I'm at the library," and the adults are frowning because that's bothering them. No one's wrong here. There's just not enough space for all the things that are going on. We'd really like to fix that. So, more seating, more computers. The patrons and the staff are tired of limiting people to 45 minutes a day on the computer and standing in line to get those 45 minutes. We have high demand for meeting rooms. We have high demand for study areas. In a quiet study area, we can only dream about quiet now. If you remember the old days, we used to shush people. That's impossible now. There's just so much going on in such a small space, it isn't happening. So we would like to provide that as well.
A big question that we get is how are we going to be able to improve services without, blowing up our budget to huge amounts. By reducing the duplication of services, materials, and other expenses, we can consolidate, again, our taxpayer money to make those dollars more powerful. By reassigning some of the jobs that our current staff does, we'll be able to expand the types of programs and services we're able to provide. Again, by having adequate parking and our staff being used in different ways, we'd be able to open on Sundays. That's a big a request of patrons. A lot of other libraries do that. People have to go to other towns to use the library on a Sunday. This proposal would allow us to be able to open on Sunday without blowing up our budget.
Is it true that libraries aren't going away? Yes, it is true. There is an organization that does research on public opinion called the Pew Research Group. Bill and Melinda Gates recently gave them a $10 million grant and told them, we want studies of public attitudes about education, schools, libraries. So at the beginning of this year, the Pew Research Group surveyed people all over the country to find out what their attitudes were about public libraries. Top reason why people visit public libraries is still to borrow materials and take them home. And the second highest reason why they come is to use the internet and the Wi-Fi. But kids don't go to the library anymore, right? No, 60% of young adults still say visiting the library often is important to them. And 80% of Americans say borrowing books from the public library is still important to them. And 80% say reference service from reference librarians is still important to them. And 77% still say free access to computers and the internet is very important. I mean, this is vital. You can't have a democracy if the citizens aren't informed. As we do shift over to electronic resources, how are people without internet access and computers going to be informed? And how are they going to make an educated choice at the next election? So this is our little fun analogy here. But it's true. No matter what comes along, the library will evolve. And, there was a time when video stores, remember video stores? They were unhappy that the library was carrying video. Library's still around, the video stores, they're gone.
And something else, as digital media becomes, again, more prevalent, things that libraries can do is help train people on those new devices. We can provide dedicated download stations so that if people are having trouble at home, regular occurrences, people calling the library, help, I cannot get my book transferred to my device, or help, I cannot figure out Overdrive, I can't figure out my new device. We can provide that type of training, either one-on-one or in group settings. We can provide download stations, which we are unable to do right now because we don't have the space or the spare terminals. And we can provide charging stations for people who do spend a lot of time in the library. We have regular patrons in Fairport, I know, that spend entire days at the library working on their master's thesis or working on their book or working on stock analysis. There's all sorts of stuff that they're doing on their devices, so they need places to charge them. So we'd be able to do all of that.
So some people say to me, well, the business community can't be behind this. It means taxes are going to increase. So this is the statement of support from our Chamber of Commerce here in Arundecoit. Chamber of Commerce recognizes that a 21st century library will offer the types of valued services and amenities that attract home buyers, retain home owners, and keep the business and spending power of residents in the Arundecoit community for the good of our merchants and the good of our residents. The Chamber of Commerce endorses this long overdue plan, no pun intended, to improve our town with a new central library. One of the realities of life is we rarely leave our homes, especially when we're in our car, to do one thing. We multitask. I head out, I hit the dry cleaner, I hit the liquor store, I go to the grocery store and the library, and then I go home. So if you don't like your local library and you're going to Webster or Greece or Penfield, you're also picking up your dry cleaning there, buying your liquor there, maybe even grocery shopping there. And that's bad for business. So as we have been discussing since April, we're talking about a bond of up to $13 million, less than the cost of expanding both branches. In the current financial picture, that means a tax increase of $29 if your home is worth $100,000, or 29 cents per $1,000 of assessed value, or $2.42 a month. This is based on a 30-year bond with a 3% interest rate and takes advantage of the current very low interest rates. And I will say that discussing this with financial experts that the town employs, it can be less because of maneuvers that are done with things called bond anticipation notes. And it's not like we'll borrow $13 million Monday. It's just that eventually we may borrow up to $13 million. But the interest rates can be lower than that using bond anticipation notes.
And it does cost less than renovating and expanding both branches. With building a new library, there's less chance for cost overruns because we know we're at a clean slate. Architects that we've spoken to, besides the reports that advise us against renovating and expanding the two branches, because again, they were not built with the intention of having additional floors on them. They're not meant to be expanded. When you start renovating an existing structure, that's where you run the risk of cost overruns, because when you tear down a wall, maybe you didn't realize it was weight bearing, or what kind of damage was in that interior wall, or where we wanted to put books on the second floor has to be coated at a certain weight to carry the weight of books, and we can't put it there because this structure can't handle it because something happened, we weren't anticipating even this weak point. So there's an increased risk of cost overruns when you're renovating and expanding. The other thing I did mention also, the additional cost to purchase land. Right now, neither branch has the parking capability if we were to expand it. And the only property around each branch that we could buy would mean people's homes. So we'd have to add that cost into our project. We'd have to potentially, people would lose their homes. That property would then come off of the tax rolls, which then increases property taxes for us, for residents, because we'd have to pick up those taxes somewhere else. So there's a lot of costs associated with expanding and renovating each branch, where building a central library is a lot more cost efficient.
And of course, there are other ways to either defray the cost of the project or to handle unanticipated costs. We have a fundraising committee that is active. We've already held an event that was very successful for us. Proposing a new library means we will be eligible for New York State library construction grants that can be up to as much as $500,000 a year. But the fate of the two existing buildings are as follows. We can sell the McGraw branch. It's assessed at $1.1 million. We have had offers, serious offers. Recently, I've met with people at the McGraw branch and took them through it. And although I think most of them are interested in knocking it down and building a new building, there's definite interest in that property. The Evans branch will revert to the Western Arundecoit School District. In 1963, when that building was built, the school district owned that land and they sold it to the town for $1 with the limitation that the land had to be used for a public library or some other town purpose, or it would revert to the school district. So in this case, they would be responsible for what happens there.
So they can either use it or sell it, which then if they sell it, that's again potential for revenue for the town residents. It would be the West Arundecoit School District residents, but it would still be benefiting the residents. We can say that it was the first annual Barbecue and Blues for Books because the second annual has already been scheduled, and due to the success of the first one, it will be expanded to 2 days. It mentions here that grants will be available. What we haven't mentioned yet is I think it was last year or the year before. Regularly, we have, as a board, have applied for New York State construction grants to help with some of the regular upkeep of our building. We've used it for
Roofs,
roofs,
doors and windows.
Roofs, doors and windows. The last cycle, we applied for it to repair and reconstruct our parking lots. We were denied. The Monroe County Library System administrates the New York State construction grants, and they have authority over approving or denying. We were denied because each year we have to apply for a variance, saying that because we don't have adequate space for our population. So until we address our basic space concerns, we are no longer eligible for those New York State construction grants. We did go and appeal to the board, explained our situation, and we still got denied. So we will no longer qualify for those New York State construction grants until we address our square footage issue. I think I've said enough about that.
There's another issue here that needs to be addressed, and it's what we call the cost of doing nothing. The existing buildings are not in great shape, and should we have to stay in them, there's some major costs on the horizon for doing that. When the buildings were surveyed by the engineers, they gave us estimates for what it would cost to make short-term changes to solve the immediate problems, and then also the long-term improvements if we were going to stay there for a long time. Like upgrading that electrical system that I talked about, improving those restrooms, and so on. Those short-term repairs, over $2 million. Those long-term repairs, over $6 million. So half the cost of the project that we're proposing needs to be spent anyway just to keep the old buildings going. No increase in space, just to keep them going.
And that no increase in space would mean that we'd be responsible for that entire cost, because again, we wouldn't be eligible for those New York State construction grants. There was a recent letter that claimed we could easily renovate each building for $1 million. I'm not sure where that figure came from, because our bare minimum would be $2.2 million.
So we have this little checklist of issues, and as you can see, building a central library would satisfy them, and staying in the current buildings would not. Meeting the community needs, planning for the future, property back on the tax rolls, central location, a smart size based on discussions with the community, flexible and adaptable space, parking, mobility improvements, expanded hours, a drive-up book return, a very popular feature, the potential for revenue-generating services, like a coffee shop maybe, meeting green building standards, and there's grant money available if you do that. And we would eliminate the duplication that we're spending money on now, all for $29 a year for a home worth $100,000. All those no's, just to keep those buildings going, $22 a year, because you can't bond that for 30 years. It would only be a 15-year bond for those types of improvements. And so that's why the $22 a year. So we could spend a lot of money and really not get anything, or we could spend a little more and get something really fabulous that the community could really be proud of. So we've kind of covered this territory a little bit. But yes, the existing branches were not designed for expansion. The letter from the engineers that went through is on our website. They said that if you want to add a second floor to those buildings, get ready for a post about every 6 feet on both the first floor and in the basement. So if you think the buildings feel cramped now, wait till we have floor-to-ceiling posts every 6 feet.
I was thinking about that. My husband and I had originally talked about maybe adding a second floor onto our house, and I was imagining what it would be like if the engineer told us that we'd have to have pillars like right through our dining room or through our living room, or it doesn't make for a very flexible space. And the other thing about, I think the duplicate services and materials is really important. Because we do duplicate so many things, and because our budget has been, the library board has struggled to make those tax dollars stretch. We've tried to eliminate as much of those, as much duplication as possible. You may have noticed if you used to be able to get magazines to read at both libraries, that has been pared down, so there's magazines that you will only see at one library. So if you need one library branch, so if you need that magazine, you have to travel 2.6 miles away to get to that, or where maybe we're not able to buy as many books so that each branch has equal copies of those books. So we've tried to reduce that duplication as much as possible, but what that means now is if we want to maintain that situation is that it could mean driving between two branches to get everything that you need.
So many years ago, the library board examining these issues realized that a central library is really the responsible approach to this problem. So what happens if the things don't go the way we'd like on Saturday? Well, then we have really difficult decisions to make. Reducing services in some way sometime soon almost seems mandatory. You know, the budgets have been tough. Not just for our department, but for the entire town government. And, you know, the unenviable task that the town board has in doling out that budget money is difficult. And when they see an inefficient library that's wasting money, it's hard for them to support increased budgets for the library. A lean, efficiently operating library, much more reasonable to give them money that they need to operate efficiently.
Recent articles and ads have encouraged people to vote no because then you get to keep your branches. And people have asked this question, what happens if there's a vote no? And none of us on the board are comfortable with this. None of us on this board are happy about this. But the reality is that our tax dollars it's an unsustainable situation. We can't keep going the way we're going. We've studied this. We got rid of one slide that showed all the studies that have been studied over the last many, 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 many years, beyond my term on the board, beyond the term of many board members. So this is an issue that has been studied, looked at, considered. We've lost sleep over it. We've tried to think about different ways. Do we use each branch differently? Do we make one branch a fiction branch? Do we make one branch just an internet cafe? Do we make one branch a local history? We looked at all of that, and the bottom line is that still means maintaining 2 branches, maintaining 2 budgets, and it just it's been a very difficult process, but we really do think this is the best for our town. It's the most efficient use of our tax dollars, and a no vote does not guarantee that both branches will be open the way that we've known them to be.
So of course, as I was saying earlier, we want you to be the deciders. And so Saturday, Christ the King School Gymnasium, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Please come out and vote and tell us where we're going, because it is all up to you. You do have to be a registered voter, and you will need to show ID in order to vote. Absentee ballots, I think, are still available from the town clerk's office right down the hallway here, 336-6045, and I know they still have some available. And yes, this is our 23rd meeting. They've actually been great. We've met not only here at the town hall, but we've met with community groups across town, and we've had some really great sessions with senior citizens, high school students, arts groups, you name it. We've been there. Service organizations. It's really been, it's kind of been like a road show. It's been fun. We've actually enjoyed ourselves. But if you want to review some of this information, go to our website, libraryproposal.com. We send out tweets all the time on the latest developments at Library Proposal. And we also have a Facebook page where you can like us. And you can always email the library board with questions at iplboard@yahoo.com, or you can email me at my email address there at the bottom, or call that number, which is my direct line. If I'm not in my office, leave me a voicemail message. I will get back to you. We also have cards out on the tables in the lobby. If you have a question that you want answered but you don't want to discuss it tonight for some reason, that's just fine. Grab one of those cards, fill it out, send it in, and we'll get back to you that way.
You might have to bring it in because you only have 2 days. You just bring it in.
Or
But
call me or email me.
after each presentation, the board carefully went through and we updated our frequently asked questions document, which is now 16 pages long. There's also an abbreviated version with the top 11 most frequently asked questions. There's copies out at the tables here. They're online. All of the public information forums, including this one, have been recorded and will air on. This one will air on ICAT the next 2 days. And there's some frequently asked question videos also that we answered based on the questions that have been submitted. So if we don't get a question tonight, we don't get to a question tonight, the information could be there, or like Terry said, you can email us. Or if you think of a question after you leave and you're talking to your neighbors and you're not sure and you wish you had asked it, definitely check the website or email us. I'm sure we'll be monitoring that email quite regularly over the next couple of days.
So again, we thank you very much for turning out tonight. Boy, this is a night where you could have easily stayed on the couch, no problem. So we're really happy that you came, and we are now going to field your questions. So give us a minute to get set up, and then we'll get started with that.
Take all the space all the time, Terry.
That's just
Yeah, I know. I'm going to spill water.
Fresh one for you.
Thanks. Okay, before we begin, we'll let the board introduce themselves as we go along. John, if you'll start.
John Perticone, Town Board, and I am the liaison to the library.
Jack Harma, formerly businessman in this town for 60 years, and just love it here.
I'm Elaine Cole. I'm the secretary of the library board.
I'm David Heffer. I'm currently the longest-serving member of the library board. At the end of this month, it'll be 14 years.
And we were studying it then, right, David?
Absolutely.
I'm
Studied
Mary.
it before then.
I'm Mary Ellen Jones, a former educator and a 50-plus year resident of Armada-Quaid, and I'm the vice president of the library board.
And I'm Stephanie Squitcherini. I'm the president of the library board. I'm also a teen services librarian at the Fairport Public Library and the founder and director of the Greater Rochester Teen Book Festival. Also, not with us, unfortunately, tonight is Fran Mannion. She is a new board member. She is at her granddaughter's concert tonight.
And I'm Terry Buford, library director.
Again, I'm Joe Janier. I've been a resident of the town. Oh, my God. Over 65 years. I was -10 when I came here. Okay, I'll be handling the questions as we go along. The first question is regarding the higher taxes in the county, and the town of Arundecoit has the highest taxes in the county. So I think the question in form is, why do we need another tax burden, and what is it supposed to do for us? Which is a very good question. Is that put correctly? Okay.
Okay, that is a really good question. I do know that, I do understand that Arundecoit has the highest taxes. When I write out my tax bill, it's really hard to write that check out twice a year. But that's something that the board considered, because our tax dollars are so stretched all over. By bringing our resources together and by supporting a single branch, it makes those tax dollars much more efficient. And the reality of the situation is that regardless of how the vote happens on Saturday, we need to spend money if we want to do something to our branches, and we need to do something to our library system. So yes, it is an average of $29 a year, but it will make those $29 a year will make the annual operating budget more efficient. We'll have a lot more for that money, and it'll just be a lot more efficient use of our tax dollars. I don't know if anybody else wants to chime in also.
Yeah, I have a little to add to that. And Terry mentioned the Pew studies that were released earlier this year. There's one of their studies shows that for every dollar spent on libraries, there's over a $4 return in measurable results. That's for books and materials that you can borrow for free from the library. That's using computer terminals. That's not counting things like being able to get some coaching and interviewing and applying for a job and getting a job, which is another service that the library provides, which is not a measurable service. But again, just keep that in mind. This is a very serious study that was done and released earlier this year. For every dollar you spend on a library, there's over a $4 return.
I think about this tax increase issue all the time. Nobody wants to be the person sitting up here saying, hey, I want to raise your taxes, because not a good thing. But think about who is hardest hit when taxes increase. It's people with the lowest incomes. Well, the library is the best friend if you are short on money, because everything we do is free. How are you going to entertain and culturally enrich your family when you don't have much money? You can borrow books, you can borrow music, you can borrow video for free from the library. We can help you improve your job searching ability. We can help you find ways to improve your education, and we can help you find financial aid to pay for that. And that's all free from the library. So yes, tax increases are difficult, but when you are short on money, the library is your best friend.
I could just
I was-
add one more point.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, then.
I wouldn't dare argue.
It's my $29, okay? It's something I can see, I can touch, I can feel, and I can use. A majority of my taxes go where I don't know. All right? They go for retirement, which I shouldn't yell about anyways, okay? But they go for sewage, they go for this, that, and the other thing, all right? $29, I can go and get free stuff, and I get $29 worth of free stuff in a month with no problems. The same money that you spend on a baseball field up in the corner of Winton Road is used, and reused by seniors, young people, 30 and 40-year-olds. It's something that you get for your dollar that you can use. So I'm willing to spend the $30 so I can get something back in my hand. And I think that's what we're talking about. The percentages, I don't see it in the sewage. I probably use it. I don't see it in the water. I don't see it in anything else. But I don't see it in putting money that goes to New York City either down in there. Okay, I want something for me. And that's what my $30 is, my investment in something for me.
You said it perfectly, Joe. There's nothing I could add to that.
That's scary. We don't agree on a lot.
I might add that with the new library, definitely property values in our great town will increase, and that will be beneficial to the taxes and tax rate.
Okay, the next one, I'm
Quick
sorry.
comment, on the town board end, we've worked extremely hard the last 4 years in this town to keep your tax rate flat, and we've done it, and it's been very difficult. You can ask any of the department heads. And we felt that this time, it was probably a time to ask for a little increase on the town tax for a good project that I think everyone can use and enjoy. We've worked extremely hard to keep our tax rate here in the town, and it's been a difficult road, but I think this project, to bring this to the folks and tell them we need a tax increase for a library as opposed to the state mandates, and the mandates that are put on the town we have no control over. It's a good time to ask for a tax increase because we've kept them flat with a lot of hard work.
Okay, we all set. The next question, have there been studies that show the effect of an improved library on property values? I know there was a statement made that for every dollar that's placed forth, you get $4 back. But and these people look for every study there is, trust me. I don't think if there's never been a study, or have we seen any study to
I
indicate
don't know.
statistical data?
I think a lot of it would probably be anecdotal. We hear from residents who are looking for either places to land, or are they considering staying in Arundecoit, or should they go somewhere else? And libraries and schools are two of the services that people do look for. So I would say anecdotally we hear that, but to be perfectly honest, no, we haven't. I personally have not seen any study that would directly relate that, but I think anecdotally it would make sense.
Okay, so.
I will say one other thing about taxes, if you don't mind, and that is that, on a totally unrelated subject, I was doing some research just this week, and I came across something that startled me to the point where I almost didn't believe it was true. One of the things that the library does that we're most excited about, that I think is so important, is the services that we create for children and for teens. And especially the work that we do to help very young children prepare to learn to read, or what are called pre-literacy skills. And we were putting together a grant package to apply to get some grant money to help run these programs with these pre-literacy skills for children. And I stumbled across an amazing fact. In England, and in about a half a dozen states in this country, the prison systems use the literacy rates of their children to predict how many prison cells they will need to construct in the future.
Oh, I did see that.
Wrap your mind around that. That just blew me away.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Is the location picked, and is it an option to put it on the west lawn away from the homes on Kings Highway and the Highway Department?
The referendum that people will be voting on is to build a library on the town hall campus. It doesn't say specifically the east lawn. So there is on the west side, there is is it called a gully?
That's what I would call it.
It drops down, so there isn't as much potential for parking in that area. So we could run into a situation of needing to buy that. There's a house that backs up to that, or fronts up to that gully. So it had been something we had considered, but again, the referendum that's being voted on is just to build a library on the town hall campus. It doesn't say specifically which side. So I would think that we would, and the town board would take the advice of the professional engineers on which side would make the most sense.
Maybe Larry has a comment.
And one of the plans, and John can probably speak to it, I know the DPW location has been a concern. Did you want to speak to possibly, was it the plan to have the trucks go in and out at the other side of the building? Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, for traffic patterns, I think most of the trucks, there's two entrances now into the town hall. The one to the north will be strictly for the DPW vehicles, and then the one to the south will be strictly for the traffic for the town hall as well as the library coming through. There's a lot of thought process in there, and we talked to all our engineers and architects through this process, and traffic patterns is going to be one of the main ones. Not only for the library itself, as during construction as well.
Well, this is a pretty good question. Will the new library have a separate quiet areas, which we've already addressed, okay? And need to be away from the circulation grid. Example is Pittsford. Will email books be loaned? Can East Building, if we sell a building on future taxes, be used solely to reduce the bond in Arundequoit? And this is called a Mary Joyce answer. They asked for you. Again, the question was, can East Building sale and future taxes be used solely to reduce the bond? The Mary Joyce answer.
Obviously, I won't be here to be a part of the financing of the new library. I would anticipate that after the capital fundraising, that the sale of the McGraw branch would be used. I would expect and anticipate that. Mm-hmm. I would also suggest that in the financing that, and it was mentioned, going to bands first, we would do probably Series A and Series B bands and they would be purchased over 2 years. They would have to be resold, either consolidated as one bond for that period of time. For example, we just went to the market and for two bands, a Series A band and a Series B band. Each was almost $2 million, and the interest rate on those was 0.73%, less than 1%. Okay. Pardon me? Well, the situation is those would go into the following year budgets. So I don't know that I've necessarily answered the question because I think there are so many factors that would go into it. Plus, again, we have built very healthy fund balances. And those fund balances will be used, I would anticipate, for stabilization of tax rates, could be used initially in the funding of the library. Those are many possibilities of what can happen. I do think that the $29 per 100,000 assessed value is a very grand magnitude of order. I do not expect that it'll be that much, but it's hard to say. It depends on when we go to those markets. But all of the financial papers are saying right now that those rates are going to continue to be low. And it's important, too, that when we go to the bond market, and I've written to Washington about this, that these continue to be tax-exempt bond so that investors are willing to invest in municipalities. So I hope that answered the question, but, it might be a little bit premature.
Okay.
I think there was an ebook
Oh,
question.
easy,
Yeah,
easy.
I want to stress I know you don't like when I talk, Joe, but I don't get to talk much in my day job. I'm a librarian. The quiet areas we know are very important, and that will definitely be. And I think there was a question about the circ desk, and maybe it had to do with where the quiet areas are in relation to the circ desk, because the circulation or the checkout desk is kind of the hub of activity in a library. It can be very noisy. There's computers dinging. There's people talking. There's a lot happening at a checkout desk. What the architects do is they work with library consultants, and they work with closely with the staff, and they figure out what are called adjacencies in a library. So they figure out, okay, it doesn't make sense to put a quiet area next to where you know there's going to be a hub of activity. You're not necessarily going to put the children's room next to the teen room because they do want to be separate. You're not necessarily going to put the children or the teen room next to where adults are going to be reading magazines, because that could create a noise issue. So the architects work closely with the staff who knows the use of the library and the pattern flows. They consult with library consultants that are brought in on the project to make sure that those adjacencies not only allow for the traffic flow and maintaining those quiet areas, but also to maximize the space. So how can you put areas together that make sense and complement each other to maximize the square footage that you have and make it flexible in the process? Okay, Joe, go.
I don't get to talk a lot, okay. That's an excellent point, what you brought up, okay? Here we have a time in which we have the ability to put property back on the tax rolls, which will not cost us anything, okay? By marketing and selling it, we put a piece of property back on the tax rolls. And if I could regress for about 30 seconds, at one time we had a situation in which we were going to build a senior center and a possible library at one spot, and we were going to lease it, and a lot of people were against it because it wasn't our property and such, okay? Well, step down the line a few years, all right, we're giving you a proposed site that we don't have to buy or we don't have to lease. But that other project, okay, might have been a good thing because we were leasing it from a private company, and they would have had to pay taxes. Okay, now that thing that's that piece of property is off the tax rolls because it belongs to Rochester General Hospital. You're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes, okay, because of this, and you had the right to vote that way. But this was also a group, the same group that is against the library, that pushed for this, okay, without any clear vision of what the future is. We've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars from the tax revenue we should have had there. So keep that in mind. Again, we've done what the town has looked for. We have our own piece of property. We're going to develop our own piece of property. Now there's another question that relates to that. If the proposal goes through, will West Aruncoit's residents be responsible for the Pauline Evans property because it will go back to the West Aruncoit School District?
I don't understand the question.
Well, I guess the West Aruncoit School District, it would revert back to the West Aruncoit School District. So whatever the school district decides to do with it, if they were to sell it, the revenue would go to the school district, which would then benefit the West Aruncoit School District residents because of the way that taxing district works. I'm not sure I quite understand the
question. I didn't either.
Mary Joyce, you look like you want to get up. Did you?
I was just going to say, I would think the school district would be thinking that they would like to generate revenue from that. So they could do it through two possibilities. One would be selling the property, one would be renting the property. Depending on what the scenario would be, it would bring, additional dollars in. I'm probably more in a position to talk about this than the library board or Terry as the director, but one of the things we really have to think about are the long-term costs of personnel. Right now, we are paying for 2 branch managers, and no offense to the staff at the branches, but when you start looking at a salary, plus 60% of that salary in addition is going to be for benefits. Then once that employee retires, then there's the continuation also of paying for health care. I think we have to really look at what the long-term costs are. So yes, we're looking at perhaps a project costing $13 million, but we have to look down the road at the long-term cost of what the personnel are going to be. If you've noticed when you go to Home Depot, you have self-checkout. I think we're going to have to see that in the
Reese has it.
library because it's kind of ridiculous to spend money on a salary for someone to check out a book. And I don't mean to negate that skill set, but we have to look realistically, what are you paying for? That we have to look more logically at the costs as we have to learn to become more efficient and do more with less. So I know it's hard for you to discuss that, but that is a fact of life that, you know, there will have to be some cost savings there.
Do we have any more questions, written questions from the audience? There has been some articles placed or negative ads in the paper regarding some things, and it's kind of tough to address those. I know members of the board would like to address some of those. Is that correct? I knew that I recently found an article addressing those by the board in a large layout of the, what do we call it, a Runaway Post now. Is there anything we'd like to address definitely to these ads that have been placed?
You talking about what's in this week's?
There was I submitted a letter that countered.
Yeah, there were a lot of letters and a lot of ads. If we don't want to address them,
Oh, that's,
We're fine.
particularly, that's up to you. I'm giving you the opportunity. They're here. I know I didn't prep you or give you the background to do it. If you would like, I can refer to your ad regarding some proposals that were made. Would you like me to do that?
sure.
That isn't our ad.
This is not your ad?
No, that was
Those are private citizens.
private citizens, apparently. We didn't, it's not a library board ad.
Okay. I think you've addressed all the problems from the negative side, okay? The problem regarding not needed, that's absolutely ridiculous. If you go to our current libraries, okay, some can barely get in the door. The parking lot there, it's not our parking lot. It's utterly ridiculous if you go to the one on Cooper Road and think that's a modern. I think it belongs to kids that are about 4 or 5 years old that can comfortably exist in there. The parking problem is ridiculous also for that particular.
The parking lot that Joe is referring to is at the Evans branch. The library and the town do not own the back parking lot behind the building. That is owned by the church, and we have kind of a gentleman's agreement or gentlewoman's agreement. Gentle person's agreement.
Politically
Thank you.
correct. Get it politically correct.
Gentle person's agreement that we're able to use that parking lot when the church doesn't need it, which again limits us from opening on Sundays because obviously the church needs that parking lot. If the church was ever to decide to do something else with that parking lot, we would be completely out of space. And I think Larry could probably speak to it. Larry Heininger from the town development department has studied parking tremendously, both at the branches and at the new space. And I know that at the proposed space, that has been some topic of debate. So I don't know if Larry, if you'd like to briefly talk about the parking issues that are currently, if we were to expand again at each branch, we'd be facing some parking issues.
Yes, I would. I'd like to get it in public on TV. Last spring, I had this rendering that showed the footprint of, no, that's fine, thank you. It showed the footprints out on the side lawn, and it showed the parking for the town hall police, the DPW, and new parking fields along Columbus Way and here tying in to the front of this building. And I typed up memos that indicated there would be adequate parking, and we kept hearing there won't be enough parking. So to make it perfectly clear, ready for prime time, I came in over the weekend and put together this map that shows the parking for the police. The police building is slightly over 22,000 square feet, and then you apply a number called the gross leasable area, which is the GLA, at 85%, 80 or 85, so I'm using the more rigorous 85. And that means that you're providing parking for the usable space like this room, not for the bathrooms, not for the stair towers, not for the janitor's closet, not for the hallways. The police need 85 parking spaces. They have 66 to 67 here across the front. So what's in yellow by our town code is what is required for that building. The town hall is slightly smaller than 22,000 square feet, and that has a requirement of 83 parking spaces, which is shown in pink. The area in front of the building and over here. And actually, I made 30 copies of this small scale. This is a 40 scale. I made 100 scale. So now what's in green is available for the library. There are 36 spaces here that carry this way. And then you carry all the spaces by the DPW, 30 more spaces here. The DPW will be moving to a new parking lot up by their cold storage building. They tend to come into their building anyway here, which is where their time clock is. You're carrying 112 existing parking spaces for the new building. The new building, 39,000 square foot building, will require 150 spaces. We just build this one new flag, we have 152. Okay, so we have enough by code. We add this flag, that takes us to 187, so basically we double row Columbus Way. We would have 187 spaces, whereas 150 is required for a 39,000 square foot building. So there are statements out there saying there's not enough parking, there's not enough. Okay, yeah, today, yeah, there's not enough parking because this doesn't exist and this doesn't exist. But like any good developer, the town of Arundequoit will build the parking that is needed. And then I also did the go nuts scenario with onion skin. And Mary Joyce wouldn't let me show you this last spring. But we could add another bay here, which added another 17, and we could go all the way across the front. Flagpoles. That would take us up to 250. Okay, we only need 150. We could go up to 250, and what any good developer, of course, we're never going to do this because this would cost us an extra $300,000, $400,000 of parking, lighting, and whatever. But when people say there's not enough room, there would be enough room. However, it would take away from green space, so it would be highly unadvisable. So back to the real deal. There is enough room for parking.
And then
You heard it here tonight.
Tonight, there will be
It's in the
enough room.
public realm.
It is out there. Thank you, Larry. And then the library staff would make sure that they work closely with other departments that might be needing the parking lot and make sure that, we schedule any programs that that they might anticipate large attendance, make sure that it doesn't conflict with those happening. So there's things that we could make sure that there's interdepartmental communication, cooperation, making sure that all of those issues are addressed. Thank you, Larry.
Okay, Larry? I always like you when you bring those charts. Well, since we have any more questions, do you mind if I review this ad quickly?
Well, I think because it's not the library board's ad, I think it's, people can read it in their post. I don't.
Okay, then, I suggest you read this in the Post. All right. Larry, I knew you wanted to say something. Why don't you and Stephanie sit at the same table?
The other thing I'm going to say is, I've been hearing about parking in trees,
Oh, trees, yes.
okay? Most of you know I had a bone marrow stem cell in the spring, so I did everything I possibly could do in March and April so that we weren't here tonight. And I was in the 6th floor Wilmot Cancer when this whole lawsuit thing came rolling through. And all the technical content that I had generated since last November was not available to the public. Anyway, of the trees out there that this conceptual plan takes out, we preserved the horseshoe pit, and we preserved the sycamore trees around the horseshoe pit and added one more. So of the trees that this plan, which is not the final plan, but it's a good start, There are 31 trees in question. 26 of those are Norway maples, which are identified as an invasive species. We don't plant them anymore, we cut them down. It's documented they're an invasive species. They're brought in the 20s and 30s because they grew real fast. They're very competitive. They're also a soft maple. So 26 Norways. There are 4 sycamores. 3 of them are this side. Sycamore's a neat-looking tree, but it's very, very messy. Okay, so 4 sycamores, and then there's one what I call a fence row ash, which is underneath the power line that runs along the DPW. So you see the power poles with the heavy lines and the transformers. There's this ash tree or some kind of weed tree that really ought to be cut down because it's been trimmed by multiple DPW things to keep it from growing into the power lines, and it's not a tree of any value. So I've seen in the paper 44 trees, 40 trees. Those people need to go to the library and learn how to count because they're off by a serious margin of error on the number of trees, and they are not essentially valuable trees. Again, you heard it here tonight.
Another fact that should be highlighted, there was a grant for $500,000 that we no longer can participate in, correct?
Correct. There was, this past year's grant cycle was for $500,000 again. The Monroe County Library Board that administers the grant does tend to favor new construction. This year, because of the delays, we lost the opportunity to apply for it. What's perhaps most heartbreaking is there were no new constructions on the docket, so several $100,000 actually had to be returned, which is great for the state, but because we were not on the docket, we did lose that particular grant cycle. Next year, we will be able to apply for, it's 2 grant cycles for new construction, but we could be up against other libraries who are also renovating now. This was kind of the year where nothing was going on. Because of the delays, we could actually lose even additional funds next year because now there's other libraries who are planning for votes and who we'll be competing against. Again, the board does tend to favor new construction, and the plans that are being discussed at Fairport and I guess Brighton are not new construction, it's renovation. So we could, and because they've denied us because of our space issues, and we'll be addressing our space issues, we could still get the full amount. But
Okay,
yes,
my other
everyone-
question to you is, okay, does this tax money or this grant money come out of tax money?
It must, yeah. It's grant money that the state issues, so all of our taxes go to support these grants, but when properties or projects downstate or projects outside of Monroe County get that money, here's our opportunity for us to keep that grant money, our tax dollars again, in our town and in our county.
Okay, I have one other question on that one. Okay, the Monroe County Library System also has refused to give us any money for repairs too, is that correct?
Correct.
That's
because
correct.
Where would that repair money come from?
Same pot.
No, the repair
I'm
money.
trying to answer the person's first question about
Go
the
ahead.
taxes.
The repair money would come from you guys, would come from us, because we no longer would be able to do that for the, we would no longer be able to apply for that through the New York State construction grants.
And I was just going to say, it is our tax
So
money,
we
and
would be, yeah, we would be.
I believe you
If
mentioned
we-
New York City, Joe. Half of that money went back to the state because nobody claimed it here in Monroe County. So you can believe probably New York City has an extra wing on a library or something down there because we couldn't take that money this year.
And that's a question that was the first question that came up about the tax money and why we have the highest taxes and such, because a large percentage of that, somehow, not a large percentage, but a good percentage goes to other areas not affected in Arundequoit. Okay, so I think that's where I was trying to get to. We've lost out on a lot of money that the Pittsfords and the Yonkers and all the rest and the Brooklyns are now using, okay? So when you think of your tax money, think of where it goes, and wouldn't we like a piece of it? All right, I think that's it. Let's,
Once we're now eligible for those grants, it could then reduce that $29 per year because they would offset some of the money that we would be spending if we weren't able to get those grants.
So-
Did that make sense?
There's just one other thing. Well, first I'd like to give a big thank you. People don't realize, sick or not, the work that Larry has put in for us on behalf of the library. And I really want to give him a thank you. And a testimony, I think, to how excellent his work is. He had already done all the seeker work, and what Pastor O did for us, it turned out to be almost identical to what Larry had done. So not only the hard work, but the quality of it speaks for itself.
Okay, perfect segue.
I knew you
There
wanted it.
is a thread out there that says that when we redid the seeker, we did it for a 50,000 square foot building, and so the fact that we're voting on, or we think it's going to be a 38, 39, 40,000 square foot building, we have to go back and redo the whole thing. Not true. What was done was an environmental impact to see if there would be a significant impact on the environment of building a library up to 50,000 square feet. When you're looking at that impact, you're looking at the impact on land, the impact on water, the impact on sewer, the impact on traffic. And that is the important one, okay? Because there's a signalized intersection out there. These are both county highways. There's plenty of water. There's a 20-inch main out in Titus Avenue. We have plenty of water pressure. There are sanitary sewers in front of the building, on the side of the building. The only thing when you're building shopping malls, senior centers, whatever, is the traffic generation. Now, traffic study is existing condition. Under the existing condition right now today, in the morning from 7 to 9, that intersection functions at level A, excellent. In the evening, 4 to 6 o'clock, it's level B, good. When you then take the traffic generation of a 50,000 square foot building, library, and it's done by 1,000 square feet, and you add that generation of the new building, like the new Macy's or the new Lord & Taylor at Eastview Mall, it's still level A in the morning, still level B in the evening for 50,000. You build a building that's 40,000, basically 80%, you're going to have 80% of the cars, and you're still going to have the same excellent conditions, all right? I can't tell you that there'll be a fewer flushes or whatever, but that was never the issue. The issue was traffic generation and the impact on the traffic network. So this person who's out there saying you need to design out to the fourth decimal place, first of all, never went to engineering school because I know who he is, but also would have driven his professors crazy, okay? Because it's obvious you don't need to go back and redo the environmental impact of building a smaller facility, okay? The work has been done.
Thank you, Larry.
I'd like to thank the supervisor for being here. Town board member Irina Slovak, wave your hand, say I was here. The new supervisor Adam Bellows in the back. And what I'm trying to emphasize is this is not political. Okay? Democrats, Republicans, both leaders of both parties, okay, are for this project. They think it's a stimulus that Arundequite needs to show the quality of the town that we are. All right? So I'd like to thank those three people for being here. Why don't we close by going down the board, and these could be your last comments for a long time.
One thing I would like to say, first of all, thank you. And, you know, there's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacks out there. And I think these are the folks to my right they have done a lot of homework. They've done a lot of research on this project. They have everything in order. And these are the people that you should let, that have made the choice, and this is the choice they've come up with. This is the best choice for the taxpayers in the town of Arundequite. They've come up with it, and I think everyone should follow their lead and approve this project.
I'd just like to further what we have in this town in the way of great water resources, public golf courses, trails, athletic fields, a parcel of land off of Lakeshore Boulevard that the town owns, 97 acres, that someday we're going to do some good things with. The only thing we're lacking is a great library for a great town. And I'm behind this 110%.
I'm happy that our town clerk and our town supervisor have worked so hard on making this election smoother. There'll be a lot more election inspectors, a lot more lines open, so the lines should, you should be able to move through the lines really quickly, and if you have to wait, you're going to be inside. So please don't stay away because it was such a long process for some of you last time. Everyone has to turn out.
Yeah, and I just want to dovetail on what Elaine said. I want to encourage everyone to please vote on Saturday. Please get your friends, family, neighbors out to vote. This is an important project, and it needs the vote to be accomplished.
I guess all that can be said has already been said, and we appreciate all the comments, and we've tried to respond to anything that was rational and reasonable, and I think all the information is out there, and I hope people will take advantage of, not take a vote where you haven't educated yourself. There's plenty of things that you can still read and do between now and Saturday. I think it's something this town needs, and I know I'm going to be proud on Sunday morning.
I want to thank everybody again for being engaged in the process. It really is an important process. I know it's not an easy decision for everybody. There's a lot of different factors that go into whether you vote yes or no. I know that regardless of how the vote goes, things will change. And I know that is an uncomfortable thing, but I appreciate your coming in and being engaged. Regardless of what happens on Saturday, the engagement process does not end there. If we are able to build a new library, the architects will be engaging feedback from the community again to make sure that the library is what you guys all want, so that the engagement will not end tonight. I want to thank the Friends of the Library for their amazing support, being here tonight, being out there raising money. I think something that's important to mention about the Friends is because our budget is so tight, we don't have an item line in our budget for programming. The Friends work really hard to raise money so that your kids can come and take part in all sorts of great programs, that seniors can come and do programs, that teens can come and do programs. Almost 100% of those programs are done because the Friends work tirelessly to raise that money. So we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. I'd like to thank Supervisor DeRizio for her unwavering support through some very challenging times over the last year, and then some. I appreciate that. I don't think you probably get thanked enough, regardless of how people feel about political things. You've done an amazing job through some really trying times, so thank you for that. So just thank you. And thank you to the staff. The staff has been working really hard under really hard conditions to be able to offer services to everybody, and I think the staff needs to be thanked too. And of course, thank you, Joe. And now I'm done. Oh, wait, no.
Good.
I'll just say, please vote and encourage all of your friends and neighbors to vote as well. The larger the turnout, the more emphatic the message. Thank you.
I get the last word.
Sure.
Okay, then.
Yeah.
The quality of people that are sitting up here is unprecedented. Okay? They've dedicated a lot of their time and energy not only to the town of Arundequoit, but to the education of Arundequoit and to the businesses of Arundequoit. They've worked hard on this. They've tried to answer every question honestly. Their integrity was questioned regarding this matter, and I think that's way below the belt. All right? I'd like to thank them for how they've handled this. Okay, they haven't come out and attacked individuals personally. They haven't come out and attacked organizations. They just try to relay the facts and the studies in the way they are. And I hope you listen to those facts and those studies. They're indisputable. Everybody has a way of reading something, and some people read it entirely to their own thing. They have the definite studies. They have the definite homework that's being done. So come December 14th at 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. The reason you have to have ID is because your signature isn't present on this particular voting apparatus. So I hope you're there, and I really need you to be there for the quality of life in Arundequoit to go forward, not stay where it is or take a step back. Again, thank you very much for being here tonight. And again, the website's up there, and any phone calls you can make personally to Terry. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Good.